This is the New York City FC pregame live. Today, New York City FC looks to lock up the third seed in the Eastern Conference with a win at Atlanta United. And now, here are your hosts, Glenn Crooks and Matty Lawrence.
To that, we are here at Mercedes Benz. We just did a rehearsal, and now we're coming on with our performance here. I'm Glenn Crooks along with Matty Lawrence. Coming up in a few minutes, Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic, who covers Atlanta United quite closely. Atlanta United, the opponent today, you see we're at Mercedes Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. It's decision day, final game of the regular season, and not really much drama here because Atlanta United has already failed to get a playoff berth. Yeah. They're out of the playoffs, and as Doug Roberson, who works for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, said it's the first game that Atlanta United's played in their history that does not have any meaning. Is not a game that particularly counts towards anything. So they're playing it out. Meanwhile, New York City clinched a playoff berth, defeating Orlando City last week, and also clinched home field advantage. They actually clinched the playoff berth the night before, but we can keep it simple and say last week they clinched. So here they are trying to maintain some sort of momentum, Matty. They've won 3 in a row in all competitions, starting with the Campeones Cup. Only 1 goal conceded in those 3 games. So they're trying to make it 3 on the trot leading into the playoffs in MLS. And it's important, I think, for them to maintain some semblance there, right?
I think it's important that everybody knows that I used my best lines in the rehearsal before you managed to work out how to press the on button and go live. So now we are technically live. So this is great. But you're right. Look, there is nothing on this game for Atlanta United, but you're a professional. You hate losing. That's how you made it this far. They are going to be giving it all. You look down at the Atlanta United lineup and you wonder how on earth they haven't qualified for the playoffs. You wonder how on earth they're 6 points away. They've got some wonderfully talented players in their squad, so there's no way you can take this game lightly. But you're right, from NYCFC's point of view, you want to keep that ball rolling. It was only a few weeks ago that it was 1 win in 10 that everybody looked beleaguered and defeated out there. That was from Nick Cushing all the way on down through the players to the 20, 25-man squad, and they looked absolutely out on their feet. They looked mentally and physically tired. But those 3 wins, the free hit in the Campeones Cup, really gave them momentum, and it moved them into the next 2 MLS League wins, and they'll certainly want the 3rd here. You don't want to go into the playoffs off the back of a loss, that's for sure.
And New York City, here in Atlanta, the first season, it was played at Georgia Tech University on grass, and then after that, here at Mercedes-Benz. But New York City has never come to Atlanta and won a game, so they'll be trying to come up with that today. And there you're getting a look at what is a really beautiful stadium. Atlanta United averaging over 43,000 a game before this year when Charlotte opened up with that 74,000 plus on opening day. They held the record for single season attendance. Last week, let's review last week. Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic is standing by, and we'll get to him in a moment. But New York City down a goal to Orlando City at Red Bull Arena, a place where it's one of their alternate home venues. They hadn't won a match there before, Matty, so it was really important how they came back from that. So we're going to see the first goal to level that score, as heard on the New York City FC radio network with myself and Matty Lawrence.
New York City with it with Gabby Pereira. Double scissor, has some freedom. Now cuts it to his right. Toe poke to Parks. Parks, little swivel, ball loose. Magno on it, trying to get around the edge. Here's Collins! That's the equalizer! Alexander Collins does it again! Tyrus Magno with the assist! And in minute 66, New York City levels the match against Orlando City as New York City seeks to clinch home field advantage in the MLS Cup playoffs. They need a win. They got the tie right now. It's New York City 1 and Orlando City 1.
Alex, box in the box, Carlin strikes again, doesn't he? 5th goal of the season
for the centre-half. He's a poacher. He turns up at the right time, the right place, time and time again. And give Tylus Magno some credit as well. He just flashes the ball across goal, begging somebody to drill it home, and Carlins obliges.
So there you have it. Alexander Collins, you heard Matty say his 5th goal of the season. And the question is, do you think Alexander Collins at the end of this match knew that it was his 5th goal?
Oh, he knew all right.
Yeah, there's a little doubt of that. And, well, I don't even know what else to say about Collins. We remember Nick Cushing calling him a striker, midfielder, and a defender, sort of tongue-in-cheek. Yes. But indeed, he's given some freedom to get into the attack. We know a lot of this is off of set pieces or the second phase of set pieces, but we see him in the final third in the run of play quite often.
Yeah, look, the Sky Blue of Manchester has Erling Haaland, and the Sky Blue of New York has Alexander Collins. And yes, of course, it's tongue-in-cheek when I call him Fox in the box, or when Nick Cushing says he's a midfielder or a forward player. But with this back three now, he has the license to roam. You know that Chanot is always going to sit. You know that Thiago Martins will sometimes carry the ball out of defence, but he has the pace to get back into the position. At times, you're seeing Carlins almost playing as an auxiliary left winger. And I mean that sincerely. He is up there, crossing the ball, overlapping the left wing back in Kevin O'Toole, and it's really quite.
He did it in practice the other day. Got to go up and watch training, and it was just he just saw the opportunity, and there he went. And how do you defend that?
It's absolutely natural as well. You know? Sheffield United used to play like it in the Premier League when they first joined, and they'd have those overlapping right centre half and left centre half, and Carlins just does it naturally. And look, the physicality he has in terms of his lung capacity, he is up and down the whole game long, or he certainly would be if he could be. I think at times in the last game at home at Red Bull Arena, we'll call it home at Red Bull Arena, I think he went too often, and I think he left the team a little bit exposed, but I think that's almost because he just enjoys it too much. He does need to be a little bit careful that he doesn't get caught out of position. But look, in the last 2 or 3 seasons, we've seen Carlins really propel himself forward, not only in terms of a regular starting choice for the Peruvian national team, but also one of the best centre-halves in MLS. I think one of the only better centre-halves possibly is Walker Zimmerman, maybe Morris Robinson, obviously before he was injured, the Atlanta United player. But Carlins' all-round game has improved exponentially in the last 2 or 3 years.
You know, the lights went out on us here in the radio booth. I hope that's not an indication of the lights going out permanently at any moment, Matty. So you want to see the second goal? The game winner? And I think you speak on this one too, Matty. Here it is. Last week at Red Bull Arena.
And finds Pereira. Here's the first-time shot, and it's a 2-1 lead as Tylus Magno from Gabby Pereira. A sharp angle to the right. Maxi Morales got it going with the swivel, and the ball through to Pereira. And that could clinch home field advantage in the playoff for New York City. Still 9 minutes left. But on the Magno goal, his 7th of the year, it's New York City with a 2-1 lead.
Glenn, this finish is absolutely exquisite. I thought that the ball through from Pereira had pushed him a little bit wide, but he doesn't try to hit it too hard. He controls the finish. He almost passes it into the back of the net. But with his lace, he's not side foot. Nothing Gillespie can do about that. That is a finish of the highest quality.
I love your description about how he put his laces through that. That's not an easy technique at that angle, running at that pace. And it was almost just a flick. Like it was like a wrist shot in hockey. I was fascinated looking back, and after you called it, that he used his laces on that. I thought it was fantastic.
Look, we know the kid's got masses of technical ability, as any young player is. He's inconsistent at times. He's now learning how to play as a centre forward. He's learning on the job. We know he's not a true centre forward. In that 2-week international break, he obviously worked on some things as a centre forward. We know that he's at his best when he's facing the goal and running at defenders. He doesn't really want to play with his back to goal. He's certainly not Tati Castellanos. He's not going to make life miserable for opposition defences in terms of physically and hurt them and lay a forearm or an elbow across the face of a centre half. He is going to scare them with his pace and his ability to just glide past players. And look, I think he's better out wide or possibly as a false 9, if you want to call it that, or as a 10.
No, and I think one of the things I asked Nick Cushing this week, I really focused on Magno the striker, and we both agreed after that match that it looked like it was the first time he was comfortable leading the front line. And we're going to bring Nick in to describe that a little bit later on here in NYCFC Pregame Live. I'm Glenn Crooks along with Matty Lawrence. Let's bring in a guy who is a soccer writer for The Athletic, covering MLS, in particular Atlanta United, Mexico, international soccer. He does it all. And I've been trying to get him on a couple of times. Busy guy, but look at there he is, Felipe Cardenas, everybody. Felipe, what is happening? Good to see you, man.
Well, hey, thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. I'm excited. I'm here in the press area, if anyone can see. I'm sure I could walk to your booth right now. But I've just gotten to the stadium. I've just gotten here excited for the final game of the MLS season for Atlanta. I heard you guys talking before the show. I mean, I agree with Doug Robertson. Perhaps there's not much to play for. I see a huge opportunity for the current players to show the fans and show the coaching staff that they want to be here next season, that there aren't cultural problems within the team, that this is the team that's together. I think that's the big message for me. This is a team that has a lot of talent, but they've turned off the switch in random times throughout the year, sometimes in big moments, especially last week when they really needed it against New England. A really flat performance, a lack of intensity until the final minutes of the game. And you just can't have that if you're going to be a contender in this league.
I was following some of your tweets during that match because I watched the entire thing. And when Joseph Martinez scored off that bicycle kick, I mean, it was electric. It was dynamic, but it didn't lift the spirits of the team, it seemed. And then they allow the go-ahead goal, the eventual game winner, and that was it. No playoffs, 2022. And that was the puzzling part. So what's behind that?
It's a big question that I hope to get into in the coming weeks, the coming days. You know, I think Gonzalo Pineda is a first-year coach. This is his first season in charge, first full season. I think he's still getting used to the players that he has. He knows he has talented players. I think the system and the formation that he wants to play has changed a lot due to injuries to key players. That's been a big problem for him. And he has, I think, there is a conflict with Joseph Martinez. I mean, let's just be clear. There is a conflict with the star player of the team. He won't start again tonight, from what I understand, against NYCFC. And we could honestly be seeing the final game at home for Atlanta United, or for Joseph Martinez here in Atlanta. So I think a lot of issues just bubbled up throughout the year that Gonzalo Pineda, a young coach, in his first job as a head coach, has struggled a little bit to manage, to be honest with you. They want to attack, but just to be really nuanced here, I think they have so many players that want the ball to feet that it really does limit them at times when they want to be progressive. It allows the defensive shape of an opponent to just wait for them, buckle down, and then hit them on the counter. And that's what New England did. That goal from Gustavo Bo, I've seen that goal multiple times this year against Atlanta United. They go up and then they concede.
Felipe, you mentioned it a little bit there about Joseph Martinez. Obviously, Atlanta United has a team full of wonderfully talented players, but there's big players and there's big egos, that's for certain. Has that been too much for Pineda? And is it now the case where it's either Pineda goes or Martinez goes, which would be a crying shame for either of them? I don't want to see anybody lose their job or leave Atlanta United, but it seems it's come to a head, and you almost insinuated that with your comments earlier.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I reported, pretty thoroughly, there was an incident after the Portland game in the locker room where Gonzalo Pineda and Joseph Martinez had to be physically separated from each other. Pineda later said publicly that it wasn't an altercation; it was a verbal argument. But I had multiple people that told me otherwise, that it did get heated. So I think that tells me two things. Yes, the ego of a star player like Joseph Martinez, the ego of expensive players within that locker room, has been a challenge for Gonzalo Pineda. He has his own ego as well. He is a first-year coach. He wants to be great in this profession. And I think the fact that he had to be physically separated from a player that he coaches isn't a good look for him either. And so that to me really tells you the story of the season. It's been very frustrating for everybody here in Atlanta. They just have not been consistent at all. Josef Martinez not starting, not playing, obviously very disappointed with that. And he's a guy that has a history of showing that side of him to multiple coaches. But Tata Martino being the only one that has really been able to harness that temperament and turn it into record-breaking goals. So, this is Josef Martinez and Gonzalo Pineda not getting along. That happened with Gabriel Heinze as well. I do believe, Matty, that just in general, the locker room, the pressure of the Atlanta United job, and it's not because it's the most pressure-filled job. I would say that it's just because it's a club with a lot of resources that they can decide one day and say, hey, we want a big-time coach. That's just what we're going to do. So anyone that currently has the job is always going to be under pressure to be good immediately. And I do think it's interesting that in his first full season, he's gone weeks now, Gonzalo Pineda, answering the same question: will you be back? Will you be back? And the public relations team of Atlanta United has gone out publicly to say he will be back for another season. I believe that. I do not believe that Josef Martinez will be in Atlanta in 2023.
All right. So I will not ask that follow-up question about what you think about Martinez. You just let us know. That's Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic talking about Atlanta United. One more Atlanta United piece. It was the headline of your most recent story with The Athletic, and it was a story that broke yesterday. Santiago Sosa, who we've seen play and has been integral when he's been healthy in terms of being solid in the midfield, but a 3-game suspension, a homophobic slur uttered toward a New England Revolution player. What's the most specific you can tell us about this?
Yeah, it's. I think it's a developing story. I would say it is a developing story, and in my case, I'm still looking to gather information about what exactly was said, what was the context of that moment. I remember the moment in the game. I was watching it on TV. It was very early in the game. It was sort of a bunch up, a physical tackle by Santiago Sosa on Carles Hill, New England's number 10, and you could tell right away just on television that there was some anger there between just the physical nature of the challenge. That's all I could tell from the television broadcast. But I can tell you, Glenn, that I'm still reporting to try to find out what was said and what was the nature of that slur and what is behind, I think, the league's program as far as training players, especially international players, on the zero tolerance policy, which I don't think it's just MLS. I think it's just essentially culturally now, especially in the United States and around the world. I do think there's something there to see what players are being told, what the education process is like. But right now, I can only tell you that I'm still gathering info on that.
Yeah, Felipe, I will just follow up. So there's been external repercussions. Obviously, MLS have given Sosa a 3-game ban. Will there be internal repercussions from Atlanta United themselves in terms of fines or yes, going into the community and learning more, whatever it may be? Or is it too early for you to tell? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to jump in on your story. I know you're still gathering information.
Yeah. No, from what I know and just from having conversations yesterday after that broke, I don't anticipate anything from the club, any sort of additional punishment coming through. Again, there are team policies I may not know about that maybe will be enacted in the coming days. The community outreach part, Matty, I think would be great for Santiago Sosa. Anyone in that goes through this process, especially in the city in Atlanta, where today, this is Pride Day here in Atlanta. And there is it's a community that really is one of the key supporting communities for Atlanta United, the gay community here in Atlanta. So there's a relationship there with the club that they've been very open with, and clearly this was a hurtful moment. That's what I wrote yesterday. It's an unfortunate chapter in a very disappointing season for Atlanta United. But we'll see. I think knowing Santiago Sosa, I was surprised, and that's why I'm interested to see what came out of this. Where really the additional information will take me as far as the reporting goes. But yeah, stand by.
Yeah, Felipe, we 12 noon is when the Pride Day parade began, pretty much outside of our hotel, and we left a little early to get to the stadium today, and people from all over, and you heard conversations. So thanks for sharing that. Let's move on to Another topic outside of New York City FC or Atlanta United, since we have the chance to have you here, your preceding article to the Sosa and Atlanta United was on Gonzalo Higuain, who announced his retirement this week. And he has enjoyed a rebirth. Matty and I have done several New York City Inter Miami games, and we have been highly critical of Higuain. Out of shape, lack of interest. Maybe he would work for a while, then when it wasn't going so well. But this was in the midst of a time where there were other things going on in his life too. And I think looking back, if you could maybe relate some of the things in the article that might have made it more clear to you why he may have struggled. I mean, he's got to take accountability and responsibility for coming into MLS and maybe just thinking it was going to be a cakewalk. But what did you discover?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I do, I spend a lot of time watching these players here in MLS, these Latino players, South American players. They spend a lot of time doing interviews in their home countries. And there are just nightly shows, daily shows, panels of journalists covering the football in Argentina. And they get these guys on their shows all the time. And I was surprised to see Gonzalo Higuain was a regular on these shows in Argentina, very often talking about football all the time. Just like he's very knowledgeable as far as the tactics go, the players go. He's very up to date. And then there was just a shift over the summer, and he started talking about online bullying and how it affected him and how it really did change the way he approached his own life, his dedication to the sport. He was very open that his mother battling a 5-year cancer battle that she lost in April of 2021 was just, it kept him from his best. It kept him from being really dedicated and locked in with Inter Miami. I think he was also just very frustrated with, honestly, the level of play of his teammates. He's coming from playing at the highest level. I mean, the players that Gonzalo Higuain has played with over his career, even just most recently with Juventus, is ridiculous. I mean, World Cup winners, Champions League winners, Ballon d'Or winners. You name the players, he's played with them. And I think there was a bit of a surprise to see that wasn't what he was going to get here. I'm sure he didn't think that, but it did bother him some. So I think from the outside, we saw a player that was antagonistic, that wasn't in shape, that was angry at his teammates, berated his teammates. And if you dig deeper, you found a human being that was struggling mentally, personally, with a lot of issues off the field, his mother's sickness. And when she passed away, it just really, he told an interviewer in Argentina, he hit rock bottom. And I think for someone to admit that, it takes a lot to say that publicly and to realize that. And he did rededicate himself. He accepted the fact that, to your point, he was not performing well. He didn't look like a professional footballer. He didn't look like a DP, that's for sure. And he was benched. He was benched by Phil Neville. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. And I think it's a fabulous story.
I do, yeah, and I want to interrupt you because I want you to hear this. I want you and Matty to hear this, but this rolls right into what we're discussing with Higuain. On my show, the Coaching Academy, Sirius XMFC, I recently had Jason Kreis as a guest. He's an assistant with Inter Miami CF. And I wondered how he and Phil Neville and the staff were handling Higuain during that period of time when he was on the bench. There was a 12-game stretch where he only started 3 of those games. And here's what Kreis said.
And so I think for Gonzalo, it was really come down to, are you fit enough to help us? Are you at a body composition? Are you aerobically fit enough? Are you powerful enough to utilize these wonderful abilities that you have? And the answer was pretty clearly, no, you're not. Okay, so if you're not, then your role is going to be somebody that's going to be helping us off the bench, because you have a limited capacity to help us and a limited capacity to use these amazing skills that you have. And Gonzalo has worked himself to a place where he was ready to contribute. I mean, that just doesn't happen just by, hey, Leo's hurt, so now it's your turn, Gonzalo. No, Gonzalo had to be ready for it. And Gonzalo, what he had to do during that time was work hard and understand from our point of view that this is what we're going to expect and this is what we're going to need from you.
Because my observation, and I saw 2 games that were far apart, is that he is fitter now. I mean, he is more prepared to play.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, and we realize too, like one thing that happens through playing a season is that the guys have a very limited amount of effort and training they can give when they have to start every single week. The guys that aren't starting every single week can typically do more, right? They can come in for a second session in the afternoon. Maybe it's a bike session to lose weight. Maybe it's just a strictly running session. Maybe it's a gym session. And so I think, I think it's a big credit to him that he took that time and said, okay, I'm going to really work on my fitness now that I'm not in the lineup every week, such that I'm going to be prepared that when my opportunity comes, or even if my opportunity is only going to be 30 minutes off the bench, I want to do the best I can in those 30 minutes, because ultimately that's the one thing I think Gonzalo realizes, is that he wants to win more so than anything else, and more so than probably most players in this league, actually.
So there you hear about the fitness, and that last remark, he wants to win more than most players in the league. I don't think we could have uttered those kind of phrases with him when we've seen him before, like mid-season on, or what does he have? 5 goals in his last 7, and he's maybe 3 in a row, and he's scoring late goals, important goals. But his body type.
He looks slim.
He looks good, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just let me say, Glenn, that interview you did with Price informed a lot of what I wrote. Like, I had heard the same thing, and then when I saw that interview, I'm like, this is great. Like, this is proof that this player, A, had to do the work, and B, the coaches told him, you're going to have to get better. You're going to have to get fitter. When I approached the story, though, that was the headline of the piece. He has a complicated image, Gonzalo Higuain. It really does. Like, I personally feel like he's one of the best strikers of the last 20 years. I mean, just the number of goals he scored in the games he has played in. Yes, we remember him, though, for the misses and the chances that he couldn't convert in the biggest, brightest stages. And that clearly is opened the door to what I think professional athletes in all sports are going through on social media. Like, it's just so easy to dunk on a player, to insult a player, to attack a player that you don't like, that you didn't think performed well. And it's amazing to really hear these players confess that it does affect them, because I think it would affect anybody. And so that was really the point of the piece. And just to say one more thing about what Christ said about Gonzalo Higuain being one of the players that wants to win the most. He did say in an interview in Argentina that playing in MLS and playing for Miami, like, it's the happiest he's been in a long time, but he feels the pressure internally as if he were playing for Real Madrid. And so I think that tells you the level of athlete that he is, that yes, maybe he's not playing Champions League football, but he doesn't want to be a bust either. He doesn't want to be a flop. And he's been in those high pressure situations that obviously is fueling him now. All
right, Felipe. Well, Matty, another reason we need to learn Spanish so we can listen into these interviews on Argentinian radio. Felipe, thank you so much. Really enlightening stuff, and so happy to have you on. Enjoy the game today, and all the best to you.
It was my pleasure. Reach out anytime. I really enjoyed it. Love the show. Love you guys both. Great big pros you guys are. Professionals all the time.
Thanks so much, Felipe. Thanks, Felipe. Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic. And just type in his name, and then you see all their articles. Great writers for that publication. And a lot of stuff there. We'll move away from Higuain, but I thought it was intriguing because we have been extremely hard on him on the MLS side, and I think rightly so. And I think he accepted it and has made his way towards the playoffs with Inter Miami. He's led them. I mean, he's guided them to the playoffs. I mean,
Absolutely, but I think we were being objective in our criticisms. I don't think there's anything where we just were saying something as stupid as, "God, look at him, he's incredibly fat, he's out of shape." Right. He doesn't care. It's been objective, and it has been. We know how good he is, but also with Felipe there, I know exactly what that's like. Not to be Higuain, but to see good players. Like, even when I played at Millwall or Crystal Palace, if somebody much better, like I played with Peter Beardsley, I played with Chris Coleman, players who were almost dropping down and were just so incredibly good. It's like chess, they were almost 3 moves ahead of you, and they were playing balls around the corner that their fellow Everton or Liverpool teammates in Peter Beardsley were already on the same wavelength and doing it. He's playing a ball around the corner, and it looks as though he's kicking the ball into space and just giving the ball away. But it's because nobody else is reading, no one's on the same page. So I do get that, and I've always understood when these big time players come into MLS and Higuain's earning $5, $6, $7 million. He's got Champions League winners medals, Serie A titles, whatever it may be, and he's playing with a kid out of college who earns $57,000 a year. Of course, that guy is not on the same wavelength as this absolutely phenomenal footballer, as Felipe said, one of the best of the last 2 decades. How can they be on the same wavelength?
Well, we're gonna go a little overtime here because I want to play one more Christ cut, and it has to do with both Gonzalo Higuain and David Villa, who he worked with New York City in 2015. Now with Higuain at Inter Miami CF, and I just asked him the simple question: what makes these two guys such great goal scorers? And it'll be interesting to listen in.
And when you say you learned things from your experience with Villa that have helped you with Higuain, was it that kind of communication, being completely open and honest?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I had a hard time working with David because he was really kind of almost one of my idols. So to watch him play all the time as I'm going through the early stages of my career, and now this guy's sitting in front of me, it's almost like I was going to defer to him. Like, hey, David, what do you think about this? And hey, David, what do you think about that? And ultimately what I'm communicating to that player is, which he may be reading into, is, wait, you're the coach, I'm the player. Why are you asking me? Now, that's. I think there's also some differences between American players and foreign players. I think American players are much more open to that kind of communication and appreciate it. And foreign players maybe look at you and go, well, geez, if you're asking me, maybe you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think that was probably managed incorrectly. And I think there was also moments where, David wasn't too nice to his teammates. And so there was probably moments where I should have held him more accountable and say, if you're not going to be a team guy, then you're not going to play. And I don't think I was in any sort of position to do that.
Well, I actually played the wrong clip, but that one is pretty stark about his difficulties with Villa and that experience helping with Higuain and part of that communication process with Higuain to let him know why he was sitting. So that I found fascinating. That's the first time I've ever heard Jason Kreis talk about his relationship with Villa that way, that he idolized him. But let's get to the killer quote, if you will, describing why Villa and Higuain are such good goal scorers.
You've been around as a coach, 2 world-class strikers, David Villa at New York City and now Gonzalo Higuain at Inter Miami. Can you share a couple of things about each of them that made them who they were or are, as far as obviously strong finishers?
Yeah, I think the thing that I would draw out that's a very clear commonality between those 2 players is how competitive they are. I mean, these guys, you don't go through a training session. If you put them in any sort of competitive environment, you're going to immediately see that they want to, but they also expect to win everything that they do. And so the tempers can flare and fly if they don't. They can get real upset if things aren't going really well around them. They can get real upset with other players that they feel need to raise their intention level and focus level. And so that's what I would say is just these guys are killers. They're absolute killers, and that's why they've played at the highest levels and had the success that they've had.
And that's what Felipe Cardenas was referring to with Higuain at times getting a little perturbed with his teammates. But I think that's an educational clip to me there, describing those 2. And that's the one thing I know about Villa going to training sessions in New York City. When he was there, that's the way he was every training session. You saw it consistently. So that's a trait that the great ones have, apparently.
Yeah, look, I think in the modern game as well now, you train as you play. I think back at the back end of my career, some of the older players would sort of walk through training and they'd just turn up on a match day because the physicality maybe and the athleticism maybe wasn't quite there as much. But people like Villa, like Higuain, when he's at his fittest and his best, you train as you play and you want to win, whether it's 5-a-side, 2-a-side, whether it's keep ball, whether it's a penalty shootout, whether it's a crossbar finish, competition at the end of the game. That's why those guys get to where they are, because they have that killer instinct and they expect it off their teammates. That's why I'm saying it's difficult in MLS when some of their teammates have just walked out of, I don't know, Princeton or Wake Forest after studying for 4 years and playing part-time, earning $64,000 a week and a year, and they have Higuain or Villa, expects them to be either on the same wavelength or to have that same killer instinct that they do. Those kids who have just stepped out of college are suddenly learning how to become a professional footballer. They don't even know what a professional footballer is because they've been at college. And yes, I went to college, and yes, I had to learn. It took me a year or two of being a professional footballer to really learn how to be a professional footballer and to have that day-to-day training and the expectations of older pros as well. It takes a while to get used to those big-time players and that drive and that desire, and that's inbuilt and ingrained, and they expect it off everybody, and not everybody's got it to that extent.
All right, well, if you look closely, you can see the New York City keepers warming up with keeper coach Rob Vartugi, and you also see the starting 11 for New York City. Keaton Parks gets his first start in 22 games, coming off the second surgery to repair the blood clot. And go to my Twitter at Glenn Crooks, and you can see Keaton Parks, a clip from him, an interview I did with Parks on Thursday, where he describes that second surgery and why he feels it's going to work maybe better than the first surgery. And I had promised that we'd have Nick Cushing on talking about Talles Magno. We're going to have to hold that in abeyance. You can listen to that interview at 2:30 on the New York City FC network, which is nycfc.com/radio. That's where we'll have the live commentary. You can get it on the NYCFC app, and you can also get it on the TuneIn app. And again, that begins at 2:30, about 18 minutes from now. And Cushing will detail what happened during the 2 weeks of the international break to help Talles Magno maybe become a better striker. And we saw that against Orlando, 1 goal, 1 assist.
Yeah, we did. Look, I haven't heard that interview yet. I'm going to look forward to listening to that, because I do think it's really important for the listeners and for you and I to understand what Talles Magno is going through. He's learning how to play a completely different position, but it's happening every week. He's in a match day situation. He's having to learn how to be a number 9, because it's not natural to him playing with his back to goal. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that interview. And look, Glenn, I'm very much listening to our broadcast together and the game as well. Let's not forget about the game.
Well, no, we have a game and we have a great vantage point, and this really this gives you an idea when you see this, exactly kind of our view. And I'll just give it to you. This is right from our radio booth, and so we scan here, and that far corner, very far corner, occasionally the South American players, those little guys look alike, and it's hard to decipher. I kidded with Maxi, Santi, and Gabby Pereira. I said, you guys have to have different hair color or something.
They do have different boots. Different boots,
Occasionally they'll have the different boots. But all right, Matty. Well, that's it for me. Along with Matty Lawrence, I'm Glenn Crooks, again at 2:30 Eastern, just 15 minutes away on the NYCFC network. It's live commentary, New York City on Decision Day, playing at Atlanta United. Enjoy the game, everybody.